Our actual president, Dana Baran, president of the International Society for the History of Medicine, and Dana is going to do a Magistral Conference about George Marinescu and Charcot in their centenary. Thank you very much, Dana.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. As the medical world generally knows, this year we have been celebrating the bicentennial of the birth of Jean-Martin Charcot, a very important personality in the field of medicine and the founder of modern neurology. But on the occasion of Charcot's centennial of his birthday, it was a Romanian neurologist, former disciple of Charcot, to give speeches on different occasions, in different places, in the name, on behalf of all the other disciples of Charcot and foreign delegations participating in these celebrations. Therefore, I think that I should mention some contributions of George Marinescu to neurology and then underline his constant gratitude towards Charcot and the French medical school. George Marinescu was born in Bucharest and studied medicine. He was a brilliant student and he could obtain a scholarship in order to go to Paris and continue his specialization in the clinic of Jean-Martin Charcot in the Salpêtrière hospital in Paris. At that moment, this clinic of Pitié-Salpêtrière was a neurology temple, an altar of scientific lampadophoria, as Marinescu characterized that institution. And he worked very successfully with Charcot, but also with his team, his close co-workers and disciples, his successors. Pierre-Marie, Ballet, Chantemin, Souc, Sérieux, Babinski, de la Tourette, Brissot, Fulgence Raymond. Fulgence Raymond, who equally was involved in conducting Marinescu's doctoral thesis. He defended his thesis in Paris, in fact, in 1897, with original contributions to neurology. But before that, due to his high qualified expertise, particularly in what anatomopathological investigations were concerned, he was sent by the editors of La Semaine Médicale to undertake a study trip and report on the state of the art in neurology in various countries, in England, Germany, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium, Sweden, and also Russia, where he could meet outstanding personalities of the time: Wernicke, Köliker, Oppenheim, Waldeyer, Bekhterev, Korsakov, Dogiel, and Ramon y Cajal. He had a very close and efficient friendship with Ramon y Cajal. So in 1897, he defended his doctoral thesis in Paris, bearing on syringomyelia, where he described an original sign known as Marinescu's succulent hand. The same year, he came back to Romania in Bucharest, where a chair of neurology was established for him, and where he was waited to organize a clinic of neurology, which he really did. So 2 years later, in 1899, he was a full professor of neurology, a corresponding member of the Romanian Academy, and in 1906, a full member of the same Academy of Romania. In 1898, as he was very passionate about different techniques applied to medicine, he achieved the first ever medical documentary film, and it focused on the patient's gait changes in different neurological conditions. This film was really important because enabled doctors to examine frequently these changes, to notice details without involving physically, emotionally the patient, him or herself, every time that these details had to be reanalyzed. In 1926, Auguste Lumière was the one to recognize that Marinescu was a pioneering personality in this field, and that very few at that moment followed his example. I mentioned the fact that Marinescu was a great friend of Ramon y Cajal, but Cajal was also a great friend of Marinescu. In 1909, Marinescu published a unique monograph on the nervous cell, la cellule nerveuse, obviously published in Paris, and it was prefaced by the famous Ramon y Cajal, already a Nobel Prize winner. He, in fact, won this Nobel Prize in 1906. And he mentioned that Marinescu's tireless activity, his successful research in the field of the histology of the nervous system acquired for him a reputation and authority more than sufficient to impose on the attention and praise of the learned world, a book that came from his hands. And in 1933, at 70, Marinescu was celebrated by Romanian foreign intellectuals, participating with valuable scientific papers in a volume published in Marinescu's honor. And this volume was also prefaced by Santiago Ramon y Cajal, who outlined the fact that his work, Marinescu's work, was fruitful and multiple. Working myself often in parallel in the same scientific fields as him, I am in a position to correctly judge the high value of his many and fertile initiatives. The determination of the nuclei of origin of the bulbar nerves, his studies on the pathology of the neuron, his magnificent analysis of the alterations of senescence in the nervous system, his happy explorations on the mechanism of nerve regeneration, his observations on neurofibrils, and many other interesting works will remain as definitive acquisition of science. In this photo, we can undoubtedly recognize Cajal, and next to him, it's Sir Sherrington, both Nobel Prize winners and both more or less collaborators of Marinescu. To continue with Cajal, in 1922, it was Cajal to recommend Marinescu for the Achucarro Prize of the Academy of Medicine in Madrid, rewarding in this way Marinescu's work on amputation, neuromas, and nerve regeneration, paper published in London in 1919, immediately after the Great War, when he had the possibility to study these dramatic cases in different hospitals, including in the United Kingdom. And so it was a very valuable work undertaken and accomplished during this tremendous event of the Great War. In 1922, Marinescu contributed to the Jubilee volume celebrating Ramon y Cajal's 70th anniversary with a paper considering the role of the, we could put it in modern terms, of the oxidative stress, the role of oxidizing ferments in the phenomena of life. Marinescu was not only a very skilled clinician, but equally an investigator, appreciating experimental medicine, appreciating and applying in his own activity Claude Bernard's contribution to this approach. And also he loved to investigate these new fields and new details concerning the nerve cell as its biochemistry, for instance. So he connected frequently the oxidative phenomena to life and to senescence, how exactly they evolved or evolved under different circumstances. In 1928 and in 1930, Marinescu was a scientific ambassador of Romania to Latin America, and he visited several countries like Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil, on the occasion of the inauguration of the first Romanian embassies in these countries. And Marinescu was a highly respected and generally acknowledged personality, so he could strengthen these diplomatic relationships, a fact that really happened. So in Buenos Aires, for instance, Marinescu gave a conference on the life and the work of Santiago Ramon y Cajal, presided the parliament, but also was invited to give a speech on Cajal, but also to inaugurate the first phone transatlantic line calling Cajal from Buenos Aires, Cajal being at that moment in Madrid. In 1937, Marinescu and his co-workers published a book on the tone of striated muscles, and this time this book was prefaced by another Nobel Prize winner, Sir Charles Sherrington. And in fact, the synapses connecting neurons were much later to be discovered by another Romanian scientist who emigrated to the United States and won in 1974 a Nobel Prize in medicine or physiology, and his name is George Palade. Well, but coming back to 1937, here is Marinescu, a supporter of the neuron theory, as Cajal was, and scientist able on an experimental ground to criticize the conception of the nervous system as a synthesium. So neurons existed as entities of the nervous system connected to each other by these synapses, junctions, named synapses a little bit later. Apart from essential contributions to neurology, mimicking or following in his master's footsteps, similarly to Charcot, Marinescu tried to explain the healing faith, opposing occultism, healing faith, but from a scientific point of view. He was familiar with psychiatry, psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, reconsidered hysteria. He did not approve Charcot's theory concerning this disease, delimited therapeutic and forensic hypnotism. He criticized non-medical hypnotism, considered it really dangerous, even though Marinescu in his clinic practiced hypnotism on a medical background. He investigated senescence, was a pioneering in this field, as he was a pioneering in endocrinology. He studied the hypothesis, particularly in connection with acromegaly. He also was fascinated by genetics, and later he also became involved in eugenetic studies, which were somehow fashionable at that moment, but in the good intention of promoting good health. And of course, he was socially involved, promoting social progress and justice for all. He gave open lectures, manifested philanthropic spirit whenever necessary, and his credo was that leaving this world for the one from which no one has ever returned, I would not like to upset anyone, but the truth must still be told, must be clearly spoken. There is too much injustice in this blessed world. Well, his country was included in this characterization. Coming back to Marinescu's contributions, we have just mentioned the nervous cell in 2 volumes, brilliant monograph. The first volume was devoted to the normal nervous tissue, neurofibrillar networks, chromatophilic elements, paranuclear corpuscle, now named Marinescu's bodies. And the second volume related to features revealed by experimentally produced lesions like chromatolysis and neurophagia. The succulent hand, already mentioned in his doctoral thesis, the palmar mental reflex, he defined in 1920. He gave a description of the disease now known as the Marinescu-Sjögren syndrome. He described a new form of cerebellar medullomyeloblastoma, and with Oscar Bloch described the small nodules, now considered the first description of the senile plaques, the extracellular neuritic plaque deposits in the gray matter of the brain, first described by Marinescu in 1892, revised in 1928. For better outlining the presence of these plaques, he applied a special and original stain known as Marinescu's method. He also noticed a tuberculoma developed in the locus niger, producing lesions in this locus niger, and he very clearly noticed that Parkinsonian tremor occurred in that patient. So this was the moment when this part of the central nervous system was directly connected with Parkinson's disease. And he published his findings together with Etienne Brissot. Lesions and pathogenesis of the so-called essential epilepsy was described by Marinescu with Serieux, and for this work they received the Great Prize in Brussels in 1895. He also studied the effects mescaline had on color vision and color audition. He also elaborated different theories on old age and rejuvenation, and consequently on senescence itself. He considered a physiological process and not a pathology. Therefore, the rejuvenating methods used at that moment were, according to him, only different ways of prolonging life, but not of completely eliminating aging. He was very interested in new techniques, new devices in order to improve the quality of medical investigations. We know that Charcot already used electrophysiological methods in his clinic. The same was true for Marinescu, but when the X-rays were discovered in November 1895, immediately after, in April 1896, Marinescu already performed X-ray examinations of patients suffering from acromegaly. These radiographs illustrated the changes at the level of the hands of the patient, and later these investigations continued by radiographs of the whole skeleton and of the skull, of course, and particularly sella turcica was targeted in these examinations. When Marinescu performed these X-ray investigations, he was still in Paris and worked with a famous Romanian physicist who studied at the Sorbonne University, Marinescu, and both they succeeded in examining these patients in Salpêtrière Hospital with acromegaly. In fact, in 1890, Marinescu and Pierre-Marie described acromegaly and its details. He also used ultramicroscopic research on living nerve cells in culture. This was the method inspired by the works of Alexis Carrel. And he used the colloid theory for interpreting the structure of the neuron. The oxidative stress already mentioned, description of the pathogenesis of hemorrhagic idiocy in 1936, original contributions to reflex trophicity, chromatolysis, neurophagia, retrograde degeneration following axonal section, and metagenic rays described by Gurvich were equally explored by Marinescu, and he wrote about his findings in 1938. He equally tried to explain this healing faith because phenomenon comparable to what happened in Lourdes centuries ago occurred in Romania, and specialists, of course, were invited to examine all these cases in order to decide whether it was just a trick, and the person involved in these healing faith processes was a trickster, or whether it was really something scientifically determined, or possibly determined. he accepted that the healing faith existed, as did Osler or Charcot, but from a scientific, positivistic point of view. He was also interested in psychoanalysis. We all know that Freud was trained in the clinic of Charcot. As Charcot, Freud was interested in hysteria and in performing hypnotism on his patients. And Marinescu, we see, equally studied Freud's works and elaborated 2 papers published in 1923, Introduction to Psychoanalysis, a study bearing on sexual instinct and pansexualism, mistakes, repression and censorship, dreams and their symbolism, general theory of neurosis, symptoms, resistance and repression, transference. And then his critics addressed to Charcot's theory concerning hysteria. He also wrote a second part to this introduction to psychoanalysis, having a critical approach to Freud's theories too. Towards the end of his life, in 1938, Marinescu was already a member of 6 foreign academies and 27 scientific societies from Europe, Asia, and the 2 Americas. And he always claimed to owe everything to Charcot and to France, to the French contribution to the development of modern medicine. And he constantly paid homage to his master, a special personality who impressed him more than any other celebrated human being among the scientists of his time. This was what Marinescu used to say about Charcot. When in 1925, the first centennial of Charcot's birthday was celebrated, Marinescu outlined the contribution of this Caesar of medicine who was Charcot. And because Romania was a country depending on France for its scientific development in the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, well, he outlined the fact that that's why Romania offered the largest support for the master's bronze statue, and this happened on Charcot's centenary, celebrated at the French Medical Academy and the Sorbonne University in France, 2 institutions that invited Marinescu, a member of the Romanian Academy, to speak on behalf of Charcot's former foreign students and also on behalf of 23 delegations from Europe, Asia, and America. In his country, he gave a similar lecture at the Romanian Academy too. Charcot's place in modern neuropathology, international neurology schools, anatomo-clinical approaches, critical neurological thinking was emphasized, along with his passion for literature, art, music, archaeology, politics, and interest in the healing faith. To France and to his master, Marinescu was able to be accepted as a foreign corresponding member and then associate member of the National Academy of Medicine of France, an officer of the Légion d'honneur, and all his life he remained particularly affectionate to France, to his French colleagues, and also to the son of Jean-Martin Charcot, Jean-Baptiste Charcot, and also cultivate this tradition of the French culture and civilization in his country, in Romania. France and Romania have a common origin, but there is also the unwavering gratitude we owe to your beautiful homeland for the great part of the scientific education that our students find here. On the occasion of the celebration of the centennial of Charcot's birth, Marinescu's lecture was about the life and work of Charcot. And due to Charcot, he mentioned the creation of modern neurology was based on the anatomo-clinical method, enabling Charcot to describe a large part of the nosographic entities to complete the symptoms of other diseases, indicate their crude forms, localizations in brain diseases were identified. And within the anatomo-clinical method, apart from the doctor's keen sense of observation, clinical manifestations and macroscopic, along with microscopic approaches were equally important. Connective thinking and experimental neurology had to be associated in the good tradition of his master. In fact, for Charcot, neurology and mental diseases, psychiatry were tightly connected, and both of them should always look for morphological substrate of their pathologies. Interestingly, even though an outstanding personality, Charcot accepted different opinions. And his favorite expression was, if I'm not mistaken. If he never agreed with some observations of his co-workers, he accepted that these could be other approaches to the same problem. For instance, he denied the influence of infections and intoxications on the nervous system diseases, but if he was not mistaken only. Little by little, new medical concepts and more coherent nosographic entities were forged, and as Marinescu said in his lecture, there was, in Salpêtrière Hospital, there was the center where one could say the great universal fair of neuropathology existed, where everything was worth seeing and learning, where something new was revealed almost daily. These words von Leyden explained the procession, the pilgrimage of the great scientists of Europe and even America to Salpêtrière, to the Salpêtrière, which had become the Mecca of neurologists. The French masters' doctrines and the humanism shone worldwide. So that's why he was so indebted to Charcot. The Neurological Society in Paris, the Academy of Medicine, and the Sorbonne University commemorated Charcot on the 27th of May in 1925. Charcot was already, after a century, still considered the Caesar of the Salpêtrière. I consider it a duty of piety towards the memory of this illustrious scholar to expose his life and work to you. For if France and the entire scientific world venerate this man after a century, this is due, and even after 2 centuries now, this is due to the fact that Charcot was a master in the ancient sense of the word, endowed with a brilliant intuition through which he was able to lay the foundations of modern neuropathology and exercised an unparalleled influence in this science, which was felt throughout the entire medical world. Well, he continued to remain in close relationships, very tight relations, and even friendship relationships with his French colleagues. They worked together every time it was possible, Marinescu traveled to Paris to continue his research work there at a higher level. For Marinescu, Charcot celebrations were meant also to strengthen science-based international cooperation, rendering humanity better, an ideal still true to his birth, bicentennial today. In 1923, immediately after the Great War, the whole world was facing difficulties, and these difficulties also affected science, research projects, publication of scientific papers, and in December 1923, the Society of Nations held its third session of the International Commission for International Cooperation, where Marinescu represented the Romanian Academy and outlined the fact that international intellectual equity and solidarity is always strictly necessary in order to enable science to flourish and be disseminated and accepted all over the world. Science, he concluded, will make humanity better and peace will reign in the world if scientists would sincerely embrace these noble and generous ideas. The future belongs to science, as the illustrious chemist Dumas said. Woe to the peoples who close their eyes to these truths. From the point of view of the progress of science and humanitarian ideas, France has gone far, one of the first at the head of the nations. This was true in 1925. One more century later, we have to redimension somehow these conclusions, and one aspect undoubtedly remains true, the fact that science is necessary, that the moral standards should remain and be attentively observed in research projects, and that, of course, equity and solidarity among scientists is beneficial. Thank you very much.